So, what was that feeling like when you stepped into the school or the academy?
Oh, it was great. I remember flying into Dallas Love Field and getting a taxi with two other guys who were going to Fort Walters, and we were going to flight school. That was great.
Were there other black men, two other black men, or was
No,
it
no,
mixed?
they weren't
Mixed together?
black.
Okay.
My cab mates were not black. But
Okay.
then in my what they call pre-flight class, there were 10 black candidates.
And how? What was the class makeup? Not the makeup, but what was the class sizes normally?
Um, I would say, well, it was considered a company.
Okay.
So you got four platoons. You got about 100 people. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So of
maybe a little.
100, you had about 10.
You had
black.
10. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So were you guys required to? Was it an integrated mess?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, at that
We're
point.
talking 70s now, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
We're talking 60s. We're talking 67.
67. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
67, 68.
So you're in the mix now, right? Everybody's cool and.
Well,
So-
no,
I know, I'm just messing with you.
no. It was.
Everybody's glad to see each other, you know.
It depends on who it was.
Right. Okay.
But one of the things, when I was in flight school, you had these guys who considered themselves Klansmen, and they would try to harass me. Now, in my class, I'd say there were 10 who started. Only 3 of us graduated eventually. None of us in the same class we started with. One of my dearest friends, Robert B. Clark Jr., he made this transition in August of this year. But he and I met, I think the first morning we were there, and we became, lifelong friends. But he knew how to fly before he came. He knew how to fly helicopters before he came to the official school. He was put out of school. They said that he couldn't fly, so he appealed all the way up to the Department of the Army and wound up being reinstated, and was on a graduate of his class.
Wow.
So everybody wasn't happy to see you. There were some people who weren't, and my instructor
Determined to make sure you didn't succeed,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And they had the one a class rule. There's only be one black guy in a class to graduate.
Yeah.
And about the fellows who considered themselves Klansmen, or basically who were anti-black. I had to break formation one day and say, look, you threaten me, you threaten my roommates. You got people who are afraid to be roommates with me. I'm in a room by myself now. I've already been to hell and back. So if you want to come down and visit me and give me a blanket party, come on. We'll see who makes it to hell first. And from that point on, I wasn't bothered anymore.
Wow.
So again, are you gonna accept mistreatment, or are you gonna stand up for yourself?
Yeah. So now you're finally in flight school, right?
Yeah.
And you're going through the gauntlet of things that you got to do to get through it. Where do you feel like your strengths were in going through that? Like, what did you discover in flight school that you were best at?
Man, I had to be good at everything, man. What we found, Bob and I found, is that the heaviest weighted courses, they would, they'd use firmware to grade. You had to do the little bubble sheets on, They had programmed that even if we made 100 as blacks, the most you were going to make was the mid 80s. Yeah, because if I made 100 on everything and I was just an average student going through, I would be in competition for being honor graduate.
Oh, wow.
So they made sure that you weren't going to be in that.
Fix was in. Huh?
Oh yeah, the fix was in. But we were smart enough to figure that out. Yeah. And the thing is that first flight instructor was with him for about 16 hours. And I had a prog ride with a young pilot who was about my age. Come from a wealthy family in Texas, so he was a pilot, been flying since he was a kid. And so he got a helicopter rating, and he just wanted to build time. So it was kind of a fun thing for him. So I had this ride with him, and he says, "Okay, do this maneuver." That's not how I got the aircraft. That's not how you do it. This is how it's done. Okay, all right. Do a normal takeoff. That's not how it's done. This is how it's done. Do this. Every maneuver he asked me to do, I did it as I was trained to do it by my first instructor. Because knowing and understanding what the maneuver is, it's the procedure for how the standards are for you to do that. You know, like say that, there are many ways to get something done,
Yeah.
but the precise way that the Army wanted it done,
Yeah.
that was a standard.
Yes.
And he was not teaching me that standard. So this young instructor says, "Gosh, you started out this flight unsatisfactory, but you ended above average. I've got to talk to the flight commander." And I just smiled. I said, "I already have." First day, I realized that this instructor was not going to be fair with me and not going to train me properly. So the next day, when I got my first instructor back, I says, "Hey, unless we're going to, you tell me what you want me to do, but unless I'm going to crash this helicopter, I don't want you touching the controls." He gave me an above average ride that day.
Wow.
Second day, we went out to fly. At the end of the flight, he failed me. He gave me an unsatisfactory. He said that I left the carter pin out of the oil cap. And I know I was meticulous about everything.
So that's your pre-trip.
That's pre-flight, yes.
Yeah, pre-flight. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
What we call it,
Pre-flight, yes. So, and I knew that I hadn't done that. So I went and asked for a change of instructors, got a change of instructors. And the next day I was flying with the deputy flight commander. We flew out from the main heliport out to Stage Field. And he says, "Okay," I shot the approach. He says, "Okay, taxi over to the sod," and I did. I said, "Well, I guess my flying career is over." It's like, okay. So he got out, and he fastened his seat belt and shoulder harnesses. So, okay, take it around the patch 3 times and park it on a certain spot. I soloed. But this guy had me set up for failure. And so from that point on, and then with Dick Strauss was my new instructor's name. And I credit Dick Strauss with actually training me on things that saved my life in Vietnam. At the end of the flight, the primary flight, he says, "There are things that this helicopter can do that's not in our syllabus. I'm going to show you some things that may come in handy one day." And it did. I became a turnaround instructor. Now, what I would do in flight school, every night, I would read what I was to do the next day. I'd, do the studies, and I would sit down and I would close my eyes and I would chair fly everything from my pre-flight, from walking out to the helicopter, all the way to landing. I would do that in my mind because in the syllabus it outlined what your flight profile was going to be for that day. So I would do that every night. So I was prepared. So I could talk through every maneuver just like the instructor could. And so Dick Strauss showed me some things for some maneuvers with a helicopter that did come in handy because as an instructor, I was in the front seat of a Cobra helicopter, which is nose heavy anyway. And we lost the tail rotor 90-degree gearbox on short final. We were about 20-foot skid high.
Wow.
So the tail rotor is about 44 feet back from the mast of the helicopter, from the center of gravity of the helicopter. So losing that amount of weight, about 90 pounds, that's a lot of moment that you lose. So we went from nose up to nose down, and I'm sitting in the front seat and I'm looking at the ground. It's almost looked like the rotor blade was about to hit the ground. So, and it started to spin right, and it wanted to roll inverted left. So just reacting based on what Dick Strauss showed me, of course, if you lose a tail rotor, you have a tail rotor failure, fixed tail rotor, you could vary the power and, fly it, control your heading. Well, close the throttle to stop the spin, right rear cyclic to get it level again, and to keep from hitting the ground, I pull collective full up and full down. And when you add power, when you don't have a tail rotor, the fuselage of the helicopter wants to catch up with the speed of the main rotor blade. So we spun about 18 degrees, just 1800 degrees, just like that. So, we just did a few spins. So I went from almost hitting the ground to about 200 feet up in the air and out over a ravine versus being in the landing lane. And was able to get the helicopter on the ground. And I was told that that's the first time that you'd had that kind of a catastrophic failure with that helicopter, that either the helicopter wasn't destroyed or pilots weren't killed or injured.
Wow.
And I credit Dick Strauss. And I tracked him down when I got back from Vietnam, and I told him the story, and he said, "No, that was you. That's you." I said, "No. If you hadn't showed me how to make a landing zone and how to stop a helicopter almost on a dime, I don't think I would have made it." But so just seeing sometimes demonstrations of what can be done with something, you learn from it.
Yes.
So not everybody was against you, against black folk in the Army going through flight school, but there were some who were.
Yeah.
And you're going to find there are people who like and appreciate you, and there are people who are in opposition to you. So that's just a part of life.
Yeah. So you make it through flight school, and now you're a pilot. What type of pilot did you become?
Well, after I finished flight school, I was assigned to a unit at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And
now you're back in the military.
Oh yeah. Well, that was flight school. I re-enlisted.
Right. Yeah. So you had to re-enlist to get back in.
Yeah, re-enlisted to get back in to go to flight school.
In order to go to flight school.
Yeah, in order to go to flight school. So now I'm back in. I graduate in April of '68. I think 4 days after Dr. King was killed.